Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. We start off the third round with Bhushan Ratna, specialist on cyber security. Bhushan, the first incident of cyber crime was reported in the year 1820, quite some time ago. Now, it's nearly 197 years since then. My question to you is very simple. We've still not improved. It's like a learning circle every single time. There is a mistake, and then you start thinking, okay, how do we arrest this? In particular, let's talk about WikiLeaks. You have someone who knows the secrets of the CIA, who knows what's happening within the NSA. So you're thinking right now, is it always a reactive approach that you must adopt when it comes to cybercrime? The time starts now.
No way. I mean, you'd be surprised to know that some of the vulnerabilities which was used, exploited about 10-15 years ago are still out there. I mean, people have not patched it. So, I mean, the hackers sometimes even don't use those vulnerabilities thinking that you would have patched it. But coming back to the financial service industry, those vulnerabilities still lies out there in big time. So, again, I mean, taking from the question which was there before we close for the break, in the financial sector today in the country, I think, which is most vulnerable right now, we need to, there are regulators, central bank coming and saying certain rules are being put into banks and the financial service sector if you're going online. But if the bank is going to be only comply to the regulation, then you are still insecure. You need to go beyond the compliance. Okay, if you need to have security, you got to be concerned on security, not to be compliant on what the regulators say.
But do people have faith in financial security? Do you think that Sri Lankan citizens are moving towards online banking now?
I think everyone is moving to online banking. There are so many apps coming in.
Queues at state banks, you see long queues at many commercial banks in Colombo.
Matter of time, because if you see the long queues there, majority of them are elderly people. You won't see any young generation guy staying on the queue.
So you're talking about the millennials, for an example, who are still going to the bank. And these people account to approximately around 38% of the banking population. And that is a very big concern.
As I said, it's a matter of time. Now, for example, if you look at Australia, if you go to the bank to do a transaction, they charge, there's a surcharge. So they discourage you coming into the bank. So I'm sure
Bhushan,
matter
I'm
of
telling you, don't say anything about taxing people for going to the banks. And if someone from the government is watching tomorrow morning, you probably would
no
be
tax. I said it's a surcharge.
A surcharge will be taxed by the government for going to the bank. So let's not go there. But let's talk about cyber crime. Let's talk about how things are moving forward. Let's take Sri Lanka for an example. We've seen instances of financial irregularities taking place through these banking systems. We had a case, a very well-renowned case, for us you are quite well aware as well, use of money laundering through the banking system itself. And where is the confidence that the people can face in systems if this is the case?
I mean, it's coming back again to the security of the particular bank. So if the security has been breached, of course, the confidence on that at that bank will be lost by the majority of people.
We know for a fact that there was a world-renowned bank, which is also operating in Sri Lanka, which was subject to scrutiny by the world, saying that they are a hub for money laundering activities through internet banking.
Yes.
And this is a major concern.
Absolutely.
Can you rely
if you are not concerned on security, a company that you have built, whether it's a bank or non-financial sector, which built over a period of 30 years, can be brought down within hours. Example, Yahoo. Yahoo was hacked, now there's no more Yahoo. It's been purchased by somebody else. So someone, I mean everyone, whether financial sector or otherwise, need to have serious concern on the security of your systems. Everybody keep on running into cloud. Everybody keep on running into digitizing. But little concern on the security. Everyone creating an app and saying to the world, look, you can access us through this app easily. Yes, it's easy, but at the same time, you are inviting trouble into yourself.
Thank you very much, Bhushan Ratna, specialist on cybersecurity. I now move my attention to Asela Lankaro, also a cybersecurity consultant. Asela, right now, you know, people say that everything is on your fingertips, the use of a mobile phone.
Absolutely.
However, this is not the safest way to move about. You might lose your phone. That means you lose everything that you've saved on your particular phone. What is the advice you have for those who think that a phone is the future and this is all we need?
Shamir, the phone is the future. If you look at the stats right now of Sri Lanka, smartphone penetration right now is about more than 50%, meaning that well, half the Sri Lankans now have a smartphone.
Now, you say phone is the future, right? I do agree with you, but then again, you also say that security is an issue. You cannot 100% guarantee that your data is safe. So, again, it contradicts your previous statement.
No, not really, because we can't go back into an obsolete way. We have to move forward with technology. But the problem here is that when moving forward with technology, I believe Bhushan also touched on that. Now, for example, when you have banks that have apps, in turn, you have to ensure that the security of the person also is looked at. To answer your question, there are certain safeguards that you can do as an individual to ensure that the data on your device is secure even if you lose the device, or you have the ability to delete that data if that phone or device is misplaced from you. So that's the control that you have. But in order for you to do that, you need to have awareness of it. And that's where we are hitting back on, and that's where we're coming back on. We can't stop
How do you do that? Now, you say that your phone, you misplaced your phone and you have important data on your phone.
Absolutely.
So how do you ensure that it doesn't go to the wrong hands?
Well, first thing is backup. Because most services, most smartphones now come with proprietary cloud backup services. So your contacts, your phone, your details, your emails, your photographs, documents, all of that can be in a cloud space. So even if you lose the device, or even if you change the device, your data remains. So that's one safeguard.
So cloud is safe?
No one is safe, Shamir.
Yeah.
Cloud is not safe.
Yeah.
The President of the United States or anyone else is not safe.
So don't you think the advice should be, whatever you save on your phone should be limited? It should not be personal material that is saved on your phone in question. It should not be something that would tarnish your image in the future. Wouldn't that be the advice?
If you're talking specifically about, I mean, we touched on young people and how they use social media. If my advice to them is, listen, if there's something that you're taking that shouldn't be there, that you feel is going to compromise you in some way, you shouldn't do it. First of all, you shouldn't do that thing, and you shouldn't put it on a digital medium. Bhushan, myself, everyone, what we said was, once something is out there on the internet, it's very, very difficult to take it back. Yes, social media sites, you can complain, you can lodge complaints, you can make a racket and take things down. But right now there are enough and more mediums that information about you or compromising things about you can be shared around. Then it's a problem. So my advice is, first of all, prevention is better than cure.
Right. Now, we talk about...
One more thing into that.
Bhushan, I'll get back to you in the Q&A. You need to hold on for a few minutes.
Sure.
Asela, you know what happened just prior to the January 8th presidential polls. The topple of the government was all on Viber. And this is a known secret. A few months later, we get this message from WhatsApp. Probably this is worldwide, saying, message to this chat and calls are now secured with end-to-end encryption. Tap for more info. You get this message every time you send a message. Does that mean it's secured?
Yes, it does. Simple answer, yes, because what we've seen is this is a reaction by the top messaging services around the world, because there is pressure from, for example, agencies like the NSA to reveal the conversations that people are having on pretext of national security, on pretext of suspected terrorist activities, people's conversations and privacy are being invaded. And how these organizations push back is to ensure that all of their messages are encrypted, and their pushback would be, listen, even we don't know what people are talking about because their communication is encrypted, meaning secure. And that's the pushback that they're
even through a court order, such information cannot be brought to light.
No, very simply. Very simply, and this is the situation that we are seeing in the countries like the United States and Europe, where although there's a court subpoena for certain conversations on messaging services like WhatsApp and Viber you mentioned, it's difficult because the communication is encrypted.
Thank you very much, Asila, for your thoughts on the third round. I now move my attention to Dina Dayalan Nagaratnam, Information Security Analyst, Sri Lanka CERT. Very interestingly, Dayalan, you spoke of the CCD established at police, the Cyber Crimes Division established at police. Bhushan all spoke about it. But now the question is, do we have the right personnel to lead these teams? Because we know for a fact in India, they launched a similar unit, and it was very difficult to rope the perpetrators. It was more difficult to rope in the people with the right level of competency, knowledge, skills and abilities. Isn't this a challenge?
It is.
You can have a unit, but it may be dysfunctional.
I don't know to what extent I would be the right person to answer that, because that belongs to the law enforcement and the police.
Let's take your organization for an example. Do you all have the right people? Is it difficult to find the right people? I know, let's take you for an example. You've been attached to Sri Lanka CERT for the last 1.5 years. You've been a lecturer before. So knowledge and skills are not just limited to one organization alone. It flies away. You can be recruited by another company to do their work. So do we have the right knowledge? Do we have the right skills? Do we have the right level of competencies to draw the right people to these organizations?
I would say so, because if you look at us as CERT, we do have people. We do have people with the right skills. I wouldn't say no. And if not, we would not be employed.
But even let's take the police for an example. Now they have a cyber crimes division, but do they have the right people to lead those teams?
I'm sorry, I cannot comment on that, because that's not my thing, and I cannot comment on that, because
in terms of moving forward, Dayalan, where do you think position Sri Lanka's cyber security threat levels? Do we think that we are really under threat?
I would put it this way. As I told before, most of us are connected and we are dependent on technology. So when you're dependent on technology, and security should be part of technology, so you need to think how you could safeguard yourself. Now, for example, I was just Googling for you on Facebook. Well, you're a TV personnel.
Oh.
I could see all your information. You have 4,980 friends, and I'm not a friend of yours. So you disclose so much of things about yourself on social media. So, well, I don't think it's wrong, but it's a decision that you made. But so some advice that I could give it to the audience or the kids or children: there's nothing wrong in using social media, because you have to move on with the technology. You have to move on, because a lot of things that you can acquire, you can learn, you can update yourself. Like you said before, then you find things on the news, you find it on social media. So there's a lot of things. So, but it's just that any accounts that you create on the internet, you need to think of security and privacy. That's something you need to focus on, and make sure that you don't use a simple passwords. Password is something personal. Do not share them with one another, and do not use your personal information as passwords. And
Dayalan, now Asela was talking about the phone being the future. You can store whatever you want on a cloud platform, and then you're safe. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, as I said, if you ask security, no one can give you 100% security. That's something that we need to understand very clearly. No one ever could give or guarantee 100% security. It could be Microsoft, Apple, or you name any organizations in the world. That is security. So, but they try and do their best. So there is to an extent, so you need to know what sort of information to hold. So if you ask me how to be safe on the information that you hold on your phone, you need to know what sort of information that you need to have, what sort of videos you need to take, and what sort of things do you want to save on your phone. So anything inappropriate, do not have them, because your phone could be misplaced or anything could happen. So
Darren, because you Googled me, I thought I'll Google you very quickly as well. See the use of technology, and I'm looking at you being connected to one of the largest networks in Sri Lanka, and you also have a Facebook profile, so on and so forth. I can give some inside details about it in a minute or so. It always puts you in the back seat when it comes to Google and even social media, for an example. You can't prevent that, can you? If you're a public figure, you're open out there. You know, you Google Faraz's name, you find him being shot at a few years ago. It's in the public domain. You can't hide those facts.
As I was trying to make a point to you. I mean, this obviously, if you're on social media, if you do have any profile on the internet, you will come up. What I was trying to tell you is that for youngsters, since you said people with photo sharing information, so you need to know what sort of information to share. I just took this as an example just to say that we've not known each other before, and for the first time, and you not being my friend, but still I could see maybe you're a TV personal, but all your information is available. So what advice the kids or social media users is to watch out what sort of information that they want to share, who do they share with, what sort of photos, and any information that they post. So just a precautionary
Thank you very much, Darren. Right after the show, you know, I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to add you as a friend.
Thank you very much.
So let's open the floor for questions. As far as you can go ahead.
Thank you. Could I ask you, please, Darren? So you're part of a government organization, a subsidiary, you said. Can you answer this? Has any of the state banks, do they use your services on a regular basis in terms of security?
Well, I've been at CERT for a year and a half. State banks...
The Bank of Ceylon, the People's Bank?
Right. To my knowledge, I have not been part of any of the assessment. But
right.
Maybe someone else might have been, so...
All right. I'm just going back to something that you touched on earlier, Arsela. You said that there was this reputation management, brand management, maybe the share price management, and so on. But we have reported cases in Sri Lanka where the Bank of Ceylon has had a couple of incidents at least where substantial sums of monies have disappeared from people's bank accounts, and these matters are now in court. What I'm trying to ask you is, at what point does it meet? Because on the one side you have the banks spending a lot of public money on defending a legal position, which on the other side you have a customer who's lost their money from their bank account because it's been compromised by Nigerian fraudsters. So at what point does the brand management and the reputation management stop in order to fulfill legal and banking obligations to the customer?
Okay, good question. What you are specifically talking about is what we call a confidence scan, literally. Yeah. It's using a person's vulnerability or using their weaknesses to siphon money out of them in a way. And obviously this is called the Nigerian's prince scam. I think that's what they said, that the story goes that you're a prince from Nigeria and then you've lost your money, and then obviously you get an email saying if you put $5,000 into said account, I'm going to give you $2 million or $10 million or something like that. So it's about, I'm coming back to the point of...
I'm actually referring to a specific case,
Please.
A couple of cases where the monies were actually transferred out of a bank account held by one of the state banks.
Okay.
In this case, I think both of them were Bank of Ceylon, and they they were communicated to, the customer was communicated to by an employee of the bank who was using a Gmail account.
That's a serious breach then. It's about, again, then it's about how the bank looks at their internal processes and how they consider customer information, how they look at, for example, if there's a transaction and there's a history of, for example, if it's me. Now, when my bank picks up a suspicious transaction that, for example, comes in somewhere like Hong Kong, it will call me and ask me, sir, we have a transaction from Hong Kong. Are you in Hong Kong by any means? So obviously the answer would be no. So it's about bank also internally having systems and processes, know your customer, internal memos, internal policies to enforce the position where customers' money and customers' details, customers' funds are not transferred. Obviously, I don't know the specifics of the said case that you're talking about, but generally what I can answer is it's about strengthening your policies, your processes, your compliances, your audits, to look at situations like this where if somebody is in fact communicating from a non-email address that is not even affiliated to the bank, then that's a serious breach of their policies and protocols. And I'm sure you can have to chat with your quality assurance people, you can have with your auditors to ask why this breach occurred, because that's a serious violation if it is the case.
Bhushan, my question is to you. Now, computer crimes don't have borders, right? So if an attack originates within Sri Lanka, I suppose it's relatively easier to isolate the perpetrators. But if it originates elsewhere, how can Sri Lanka secure the cooperation of the international community? How does that happen?
If you are a part of, we are a signatory for the Budapest Convention. So if any country within there's a breach comes in place, then the country is under obligation to support you. If it is not, there are certs in other countries where Sri Lanka cert can get in touch with them and either block that IP or can get the details of that IP address from that law enforcement agencies. So that's the idea of, I think, having certs around so that they support each other at the time of need.
Now, we talk about more laws, bringing new laws, but we hardly look at the investment that has to go into implement them. Implementation has always been a bottleneck. What areas do you think authorities should look at to tackle cybercrime in terms of new laws and implementation? What should be the focus?
I think what you need to do right now is to look at what the hackers are doing at present. Now, if you look at some days back or some years back, the hackers used to penetrate into your system through the server or break into your parameter level defense of network. But if you look at the recent reports, 2016 reports, now the guys are not going behind the servers. They don't go behind the networks anymore, because you have enough and more people or even the technology to protect them. Now they go behind people who are ignorant. Now, good old days, you can say the looking after your security is a responsibility of the IT department. I mean, even if something happens, you dial the IT department number and tell them, look, my computer is not working. But when the guy comes and see it's not plugged in, you go to that level. But today it is not. I mean, the IT department cannot secure your computer. You need to have the knowledge to secure yourself. So it's a responsibility of everyone. You can't say it's only a part of the organization. That's your responsibility.
As Sri Lankans, how bad is our knowledge on internet security?
Very bad. That's the reason. That's where. So when we, for example, when we started 6 years back, our first thing was to at that time security was not as much as of a concern now, and we were looking at what level, to whom do we communicate to. So we started communicating to the CIO level, CTO levels, but then they all aware, they know. But the point is, the message do not go beyond that to the board. So then you have a boardroom discussion or a board paper goes in to say, look, I mean, coming from the IT department says, I think we need to invest on this, I think we need to invest on people, we need to do any training and development, so on and so forth. I would say most of the board will, did anything happen last year?
Knowledge on internet, is it getting pretty bad or is it improving?
Knowledge on internet is improving, but the knowledge on security is not as improving as fast it should be. And coming back to you again, so that if you don't transfer that, then what happens? So then the board shuts the paper down, saying because nothing happened last year, so let's wait till something happens next year.
Asela, in light of the increasing digitization of Sri Lanka, how are we supposed to protect our children from cyberbullying, pedophilia, harassment on online platforms, given the fact that we are lagging behind in terms of laws, in terms of creating awareness? How do we go about progressively creating awareness among our children?
I think there's a stakeholder here you forgot. It's the parents. So obviously right now the parents give a smartphone or a tab for a child to just keep them occupied. But if your teenager or someone that you love, your child, is going to be on social media, you need to make them understand the responsibility of social media. You need to give them awareness on basic controls of social media. For example, if you're creating an Instagram account, you need to tell them, if it's a young lady, you need to tell them, listen, it's a better idea for that profile to be private than public, because obviously if your pictures are going to be out there and everyone has access to it, maybe that's not a good idea. So that awareness needs to come across.
Asela, maybe we can expect that from urban middle class parents, but what about the rest? What about the masses? The parents may not know about all of these intricacies.
Absolutely. So then you have agencies like SLCert who are actually doing a pretty good job of going to schools and trying to educate them. So educators, schools also need to take an active role in this, because we can't be in denial right now. Listen, there's 5.3 million people in Sri Lanka on Facebook. Most of them are between 13 to 18. You have about significant amount, I don't know it from the top of my head, but significant amount of young people. Instagram, there's 750,000 Instagram users in Sri Lanka. A big chunk of that is children from 13 to 18.
Something that we find, Asela, is that no one stakeholder is willing to take on the responsibility. There's a ministry for digital infrastructure and telecommunications. There are other agencies such as SLCert, and Dylan, you said that it is not within your mandate to do this, but that you're doing this as a community service.
Let me correct you. That's when it comes to awareness. Awareness is something that we do, but when it comes to handling social media...
Handling social media...
Yes, obviously it's not our mandate.
There's an agency, Sonali, that you forgot, the NCPA. The NCPA, in fact, has been very active on social media, on schools, on the ground, trying to engage young people and educate them. In fact, if you go right now to the NCPA social media pages, they actively promote safe use. They actively promote to young people basic privacy settings, basic security settings, just to make sure that you're okay. Yes, we need to take a step forward and look at laws and the framework to guarantee the security. But what I always say, and I think all three of us agree, that certainly it must start with educating and the awareness. If you are going to say, listen, I'm not aware of it, I would say, listen, that's a travesty. Simply because getting onto a social media, creating a social media page, Sonali, is very easy. It's any kid you talk to them, they can do it. But right now what they don't know is just the basics of keeping themselves safe. Or it's the basics of sharing which picture to share and which picture not to share. Now those are the things that they don't know about, and those are the education and the awareness and the effort that we must take to make sure that they know, because you can't stop this. This is going to go forward. 50%, like I said, 50% of the people have smartphones. By next year it will be more than that. We're closer to about 70-80% there. Then what do we do?
Bhushan, how important is it for the education system to have, in our curriculum, for us to have sort of methodologies to create awareness on cyber security?
It is very important. In fact, last week we did our first ever National Youth Summit on Cybersecurity,
Right.
where we invited schools all around the island. There were almost about 360 schools came into the workshop, where we brought down a youth convicted hacker from England.
Right.
So they got the opportunity to listen from a person who had been on the other side. At the age of 17, he was arrested by the FBI and he had 3 years of jail sentence. And he spoke in front of all the youth. And something very funny came out of that session, which I also still think about it, is that everybody thinks hacking is illegal. And always try to arrest the hacker and put them behind the bars. But how many of them actually trying to use the knowledge of that person and use it to support you instead of putting him out of the society? I think that is what we should look at. The government and the Minister of Digital Infrastructure, Minister Harin Fernando, was present, and this person was particularly saying the government should hire hackers to hack into the systems to find the vulnerabilities.
The point is, Bhushan, does the government actually have a policy? Because last year from the budget the government decided to give away tabs to A-level students who are passing out after doing their O-levels. But is it practical? They don't even know how to use. The literacy level of those in the rural sector is not that great. They can absolutely do anything. And then they want to make Sri Lanka a free Wi-Fi zone, and not even telling them the pitfalls of public Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Answering to the first question, Shamil, you might be surprised to see how the kids use the technology. I mean, it doesn't matter to urban or rural. You give a guy a tab, they will tell you what to do within very short period of time. Second question, I agree with you, giving public Wi-Fi is, I mean, insecure public Wi-Fi is you asking for trouble.
Bhushan, I don't have any doubts when you say that the rural masses of Sri Lanka knows how to use a particular tab, but the point is the darker side. Would you leave your kid with a tab?
Absolutely, I would. But is the answer take the tab away from them? I don't think.
So what, what is the parental advice that you have?
You got to give with protection. There are parental protections that you can put into the tab and give.
Shamira, when we say a tab, just to add a point, when you say a tab, I think the picture in your mind would be the tab that you use daily. But when you talk about tabs used in educational settings, what we've seen is there are specific controlled fenced off approach that they take even to the internet or even to the access that they have. So there could be, I'm just assuming here because I don't know the specifics, I have to be honest, but when you talk about a tab being given for an education purpose, we've seen these type of things happening in Africa, where it's the syllabus is already loaded onto that app as an app. For example, you can connect to your teachers, so the restrictions are there within that tab.
No, I said the point is not that. The point is very simple.
No, I'm trying
are
to
they
understand.
Are they using it? Let's take the recent example. What happened?
Sure.
Near Vajra Road, this boy who's a millionaire's son rides the car, having his Snapchat on. And he met with that unfortunate accident because he had the Snapchat on and he was chatting with someone.
Okay.
And he took a turn to his left and then there you go. You know, he didn't die because obviously he was in a Mercedes-Benz, so nothing happened to him.
And the point
but the point is very simple. Are they using it right? You know, we're talking about people who are in urban areas. Are they using it right? Now take a look at Saudi, the recent example in Saudi Arabia. A 13-year-old boy who's an Arab is Snapchatting with another girl in another country. And because of the Sharia laws, he was arrested by the police in Saudi Arabia. Let's put that all aside. But the point is, would they use it right? Mustn't the government make the people cognizant about the darker side of using social media? Is that happening right now?
I don't think the answer is not the taking the tab or showing them the darker side.
But making people aware, but they don't even have a plan.
What's your alternative? Because listen, technology will always be there. Technology, Shami.
There is no problem with technology.
Yes,
when you embrace technology, there is also a learning curve added to it.
Absolutely.
There's always some sort of teaching that has to come into play. Or else you're going to find children, the future prospects of the nation, going in cars, owning their Snapchat, and this was very viral as well on
Shami, coming back, that's what I said, people, process and technology, not the other way around.
Absolutely.
So if you go the other way around, that's the problem that you will be heading to.
Could I ask you a question, please, Darren? The government's free Wi-Fi to the nation, how much of space is allocated?
I'm sorry, that's out of my area.
Okay.
I don't
Can
think
you
I'll be the
answer
person
that,
to answer that.
Well, I can answer on what's available in the public domain. I think there was a spectrum that is first to be allocated.
Is it adequate?
That I don't know, because that again is, you have to get into the
Do you know
technical
the answer to that?
nitty-gritties of that project, which I'm not aware of.
And what about you?
I'm not aware what's out
For
there.
us, unfortunately, none of them are geared up with the information that we require.
Okay, we'll leave that for News 9.
My final question to you, Asela. Cyber terrorism has been referred to as a 24/7, 365 days a year giant that never sleeps and never stops preying. How do we as a country go about developing a multifaceted approach to fight this giant, to minimize vulnerabilities?
It's not only a governmental process. There's a lot of stakeholders involved. Private sector, the people, like Bhushan very correctly said, there's always three elements: the technology, the process of it, and the people. When you look at how fast cyber crime and cyber terrorism is evolving, the bad guys are always 3 steps ahead of us, any country. So we need to have a concerted approach when it comes to dealing with this at a policy level. We need to have, I would say, I mean, I'm going out on a step here saying a specific agency, you know,
Do
along
we have
the
a
lines
specific agency?
SLCert, like I said, they're doing a lot, but right now, I mean, we discussed this off air, their resources must be strengthened 100-fold, I would say, minimum, to handle the workload that they're doing. Do you want to create a specific agency to look at all of the facets that can be affected from a terrorist attack in cyberspace? Is somebody looking right now at our national payment switch? Is somebody looking right now at our stock exchange? Is somebody looking at all of the banks combined? Who is there right now to look at all of this, the government websites, and identify that there's something wrong nationally? Right now we look at it from a very siloed approach. We would identify that bank A and bank B are affected, maybe government website A and B are affected, but no one to really put that information into one forum and say, listen, I think Sri Lanka is under a massive cyber attack right now. Right now we don't have that capability. And I think we need to take a policy measure, because this is what the world is doing. We need to look at policies. We need to look at establishing specific agencies. We need to look at recruiting specialists, experts in those fields, to be more proactive, to look at these situations and handle them. Because right now, Sonali, it's just a matter of time before we face an attack. Countries far better equipped than us have suffered more damage. And I shudder to think what will happen, the unprepared Sri Lanka, when a cyber attack does come, which is not too far away, by the way.
Right then, before we move to a short commercial break, I want to pose a question from Dalan. Dalan, right now in Sri Lanka, interestingly, we like to import softwares. We don't like homegrown softwares. We see this even in tenders that are called for, saying that whatever systems are in place should be a foreign system, should not be a homegrown system, and local manufacturers are being sidelined. We see this happening even as we speak right now. It's all about public vengeance at the end of the day, getting the right methodology in place, because I recollect some time ago, it was a Sri Lankan based company that developed a software for the London stock market. And people have forgotten this. And then the London stock market bought over this particular company because they don't want a foreign company handling the softwares in the London stock market. And probably you know this story. And now it is a London-based software company. Are we strengthening even the companies on the ground in Sri Lanka to develop something homegrown for our systems? Do you think that we have that technical know-how? Because I know that there are Sri Lankans who can do it. If you have a boy, a 16-year-old boy, hacking to the president's website, I think that there might be someone who can properly bring out a proper software to protect Sri Lanka as well, a proper homegrown system.
You mean to protect the whole?
Maybe.
As you need to be
protect Sri Lanka from cyber crimes.
I mean, you cannot
we don't have a system right now. We don't have any company who is doing that, based on Asela's remarks and even based on Bhushan's remarks. But we've forgotten the past. We had companies that were providing softwares to the London stock market.
I think they were more specific in terms of that software was designed for stock market. And when you think of cybercrime or cybersecurity as a whole, we have a large network. We have so many companies, so many government, private organizations, and having a software monitoring all of them, I think that's the next level that they're trying to move to, which is called a SOC. Which
I always think very ambitiously, Dylan. I always think when I sit on this particular seat, why can't we be like Facebook? Why can't we be like SAP?
Shamil, I think it's all about attitude. Yeah. Attitude. The point is, you're very right. Our own people don't accept that we can do this, and they always go procure something out of the country. Correct. Sometimes that particular product may be developed here. Absolutely. But they are willing to purchase it if it's coming from outside. It's all about to do attitude. It's the same thing the garment industry. You go and buy a Marks and Spencer thing from London, and then when you bring it to Sri Lanka, it's made in Sri Lanka. It's the same thing with softwares. I mean, there are so much of software companies in this country.
I know you're working for a government-based organization, and you cannot be candid as Bhushan and Asela. You cannot obviously criticize the government, and I totally agree with you. I'm not asking you to point the finger at anyone at this point of time. But I'm asking you the attitude. You know, you're like the younger generation that is coming forward to the limelight. And when I was told that someone from Sri Lanka CERT is coming and he's an information security analyst, I was very happy to see young people on the show tonight, apart from Bhushan as an exception.
What makes you think I'm not young?
But this is the future, and Bhushan's point is very right. You know, we don't want a homegrown system, a solution, but we are an organization, we are a country that is developing software. You go to Orion City, you see BPOs are being established. Now you have the same organization trying to develop a $5 billion company in Sri Lanka, revenue. What is happening? Why aren't we appreciating these local homegrown companies?
Right, this is how I would put it. It all depends what sort of software is needed and what sort of purpose. And if that could be built within the country, yes, obviously it should. And that's what they should. And if the software is not available, for example, if you look at anything like any products from Microsoft, certain things are not available. So we'll have to get it from vendors like Microsoft or any other vendors.
But why can't we think like SAP? I always think, why can't we think
not that
like
we
SAP?
Can't think.
Develop something.
It's just that we are a developing country. We need to think of that too.
No, but we should not think as a developing country. It's knowledge based.
And actually, just to add, right now, when you look at the IT space, there are absolutely talented people out there. You mentioned Facebook. One of the top level people at Facebook is a Sri Lankan. So that, and if you look at most of the tech companies, you lift the veil, you'll see that a lot of Sri Lankans are there in key positions. When you look at the local tech industry, we've done phenomenal things. It's just that probably it's not in the radar. Do we need to develop this industry further? Absolutely, because there's so much potential, even in the terms of cybersecurity. Now, let me take, Shamir, a country like Israel for an example. Israel has cybersecurity exports worth $60 billion as revenue to their country. What are we doing? Why are we not developing products, developing services, developing tools that you can use, that can be purchased, marketed worldwide. Why isn't the government probably, again, looking at encouraging local software vendors, locally built, homegrown solutions?
So you accept the fact that the government presently in power, or the governments which were in power, is not giving an opportunity to local companies?
I would say we need more opportunities. An equal playing field. An equal playing field.
Yes, everyone's very careful today. Yes.
Thank you, Sham. My question is for Asela. Now, we spoke about awareness and precautions.
Sure.
Now, there's a study done by Diniti Jayasekar of the University of Kelaniya, who has called for more legislative initiatives, such as introduction of a Personal Data Protection Act.
Absolutely.
Then reformation of defamation laws and introduction of specific cyber defamation laws. Then safeguarding methods to be taught to parents, right? Increasing awareness on cyber crimes and how to report them to authorities. Introduction of a political internet code of ethics. So we are talking about more legislation.
Yes.
Do you think this could help Sri Lanka face the challenge of cyber crimes, or is this a long shot?
Listen, legislation is as good as the people enforcing it. I'll be very frank. You can have the best legislation in the world, and when you look at certain legislations that we have, it's on par in the world. But then, if you candidly ask me how well we are enforcing it, or how well the common man can seek redress,
And even comprehend it, I guess.
yes, and to have confidence, that's a different debate. But yes, is there a certain lacuna in the law? Absolutely. Cyberbullying, cybercrime, extortion. You have instances where you're impersonated online. We don't have a Data Privacy Act right now. Your data, your personal data is being used by all of the companies. Obviously, I'm sure you're getting SMSs from companies you don't even know, because your data is being used by companies for commercial interests. So these are things that we can and we need to do to strengthen our legal framework. But again, the will and the enforcement of it is a completely different.
Thank you very much for your thoughts, gentlemen. First, second, third, fourth rounds, we have a final round as well. Stay connected. Stay with us. We will be right back. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. I now move my attention to start off with Asela Vaidya-Lankara, cyber security consultant. Asela, there is a fine line when it comes to democracy and cyberspace, freedom in social media, on social media. Because between May 2013 and May 2014, 41 countries passed or proposed legislation to penalize legitimate forms of speech online. Democracy and use of social media, there's a fine line.
But what do you do about hate speech? Hate speech is hate speech regardless of the media. That's something I believe Excellency the President also spoke about, something along those lines. So this is where the fine line comes in. Robust democracy, Shamir, is where people of different views or different camps exchange their views in a very free and open way. But if you look at something like Facebook, it's created a space where people who have your own views, people who agree to your own worldview only, are encouraged and pushed across to you. It's called echo chamber effect. So literally when you go on Facebook, Facebook looks at your data, looks at your patterns, and surprisingly it analyzes you and looks at your political views. For example, if you're leaning left, a liberal, or if you're a conservative, it in fact puts that data into a form that it can put it into a program and classify you. So it will take a concerted effort to push information that agrees with your worldview. And this is the danger of social media, because you're given a view that you agree with, or it's consistent with your view of the world. Now, the problem occurs when you have one view and I have one view, and on social media I see that my view is reinforced and your view is reinforced. And how is that going to help a democracy? Because then you become radicalized in your view. I will become radicalized in my view. And that way, because social media, don't forget, when it's free, you're the product. Because your insights, your analysis of who you are, gives them data to sell to advertisers. So that they can push products and services, even thoughts of how you should think on certain things to you. Because you're the product, end of the day. In a democracy, I don't know, sometimes I guess it's counterproductive in that way.
Thank you very much, Asela Vaidya-Lankara, cyber security consultant. I now move my attention to Deenadayalan Nagaratnam, information security analyst, Sri Lanka CERT. Dayalan, in terms of advice for parents, you said that you all have launched many programs island-wide. If anyone wants a particular program or a workshop, you all are willing to do that. But there are a lot of parents at home watching this show tonight. What is the advice you have for them?
Okay, when it comes to security, I would say do not stop your children. I mean, don't tell them don't get into the internet or don't do this. It's okay to be on social media. It's okay to be on the internet and use it wisely. If you have a computer or a desktop, please have it on in the living room so that parents are aware of things what the children do. Have an eye on what they do, and make sure that any accounts that they create it could be a social media account or email account, it could be anything. Make sure that security, privacy policies, privacy settings are set correctly. And when they have, in terms of sharing information, their photos, make sure who you share with and what sort of information to take, what sort of photos you take, and what sort of videos to have on your phone and what not to have. And who do you share with? That's very important. And make sure that you don't spread false news on social media. That's very important. And also when it comes to password, which is very important, do not use simple passwords. For example, anything with your name or your mobile number or your ID card number, your passport number.
How can you choose a password?
So any phrase, for example, just a phrase that would include a letter, any special characters, and simple and capital letters. So something you can create, some phrase that you want to create, and you have that, and you mix them up with some letters and characters so that it becomes difficult for someone else to guess your password. And when people say the accounts are being hacked most of the time, that's because they use their personal information. This happens with
some websites say passwords are limited to only 8 characters.
Yes.
Then if that's the case, how can you use a phrase?
That is good enough. 8 is good enough if you do combine them with letters, characters, and special characters. So you need to have combination of that.
Thank you very much, Dayalan. I will get back to you, Bhushan. Hold on for a second. We'll get back to you in a second. Thank you very much, Deenadayalan Nagaratnam, for joining us this evening, Information Security Analyst, Sri Lanka CERT. Right, Bhushan, I'm not going to pose a question to you. It's all yours.
Now, coming back to the password thing, I said there are password managers, which is easy that you can, you don't need to keep them in your mind. You can keep it in there and use it.
Bhushan, there are a lot of parents watching our show as well as youngsters who are watching our show tonight. What's the advice you have for them?
Be secure. First advice. How to be secure is something that you need to realize on your own. The awareness, as he said, that what you need to protect is number one, that you need to understand first. Do you want to protect a child from social media activities or internet, use of internet? If you guide them properly, as I always say, it's not taking them away from the technology, but to use the technology securely. You guide them in the right manner and show them, like you said, the bad side of it. If you don't do it, this is what could happen to you, and bring certain examples which has happened in the world, especially cyberbullying and using your identity theft, where somebody using your identity and doing something else, and where you get caught into it. So that type of awareness will always create the child mind's thinking. But if you go and tell the child not to do it, that is something that he is going to do it behind your back.
Thank you very much, Bhushan Dayaratna, specialist on cybersecurity. Thank you very much, Deenadayalan Nagaratnam, Information Security Analyst of Sri Lanka Computer Emergency Readiness Team, for joining us this evening. Thank you very much, Bhushan Dayaratna, specialist on cybersecurity, as well as Asela Vaidya-Lankara, cybersecurity consultant. Thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Charita. Thank you very much, attorney at law Sonali Wanagabadage, for joining us this evening. Thank you very much, Faraz, for joining us as always. Tomorrow morning, who's your guest on the show?
Rear Admiral Pierre De Silva from the Sri Lankan Navy, who's going to tell us all about how they help with disaster relief and management.
I hear that there is a new army commander. Are you aware of it?
Indeed, it's Mahesh Senanaika.
Right then, tomorrow morning on Newsline, you can catch Faraz and Faraz's guest tomorrow morning on the show. A few things that I will be taking back home tonight. First thing is, it's not technology through processors that drive people. It's the other way around. It's people through processors that drive technology. So then, I'll leave you tonight with a quote. Think again, think if you need to think again, and then click. It's not the other way around. You know why? Because there's always someone out there watching you. Take care and good night.